Hello and welcome to Stories by Kev. I don't know what the weather's like where you live, but here it's pretty cold. So I pulled a story out of the vaults about winter in a great little place called Sanctuary. Hope you like it. Harold didn't realize he was lost until it started to get dark outside. Winter twilight has a way of bringing things into focus. He'd been trailing what looked like a big buck for at least the last hour. He left the rest of his hunting party behind when he saw the tracks. No way he planned to share this one. Last time he brought his buddies along for the chase, Billy took the kill shot while he was lining his up. Harold pulled out a two-way radio that he kept in a gear bag attached to the back of his snow machine. "Hey guys, it's Harold. What's your 20?" Nothing came back. He tried again. "Can anybody hear me? It's Harold. Getting cold out here. Where are you guys?" Still nothing. He looked at the radio. The power indicator was dark. Well, that's just fucking great. He tossed the radio back into his gear bag. In the growing dark, he looked at his tracks. He'd have to follow them back to camp, wherever that was. As he turned his machine around, snow began to fall. It wasn't much at first, but it got heavy within a few minutes. Visibility turned to shit. And then he realized he wouldn't be able to backtrack for much longer. He stopped and pulled out his iPhone. Maybe there was some reception. It was worth a try anyway. He saw signal bars and relief washed over him. At least he could connect to the rest of the world. He opened up maps and he looked for his position. When a flashing blue dot showed up, he had to scroll over before he found the parking lot that contained his truck. The other guys were there by now, wondering where he was, and it was a long ways off. He tried to guess how long it would take for them to call the cops. A few hours, maybe. He looked at the gas indicator. Not great, less than half a tank. He pulled the map back to his position and saw something that looked like a town real close to where he sat. Zooming in confirmed his suspicion. It was a town, all right. Too small for an artificial dot, it still contained a few houses. There was an access road, too. Maybe he could stay for the night, make a phone call, get some gas in the morning. The snow was coming down as he pointed himself toward the place, moving slow to avoid hitting trees. It only took a few minutes before his screen blip was right next to where the town should be. But he didn't see anything out there. Maybe snow was obscuring the place. He continued to move forward. When buildings came into view, they didn't seem right. There was something off, and horizontal snow wasn't making it easier to figure out what it was. He didn't dwell on it, didn't really care. All he wanted at that moment was a warm place to hole up in while he gathered his thoughts. He was almost at his destination when the snowmobile stopped running. He looked at the gas gauge. Well, it showed fuel. No problem. He was close enough to walk, so that's what he did. He had a lot of trouble seeing where he was headed. The snow was almost a solid wall. When he thought he might miss the town, a voice called out to him. "Over here, come this way." "Where are you? I can't see anything." "This way, right in front of you. You're almost there." Harold was trying to part the snow in front of him with his hands. It was a pointless exercise for sure, but he thought it was working as he stepped into an area that was almost clear. The snow disappeared and he stood in the middle of a road that led to... Well, it led to town all right, but this town wasn't suffering from winter. In fact, there was no snow at all. He turned and looked back. It was dark outside, and he could see snow raging just past his reach. He started to walk back toward it. "You don't want to do that, my friend. Come this way, we can talk." Harold kept walking without looking back to the voice. He wasn't sure he preferred the cold, but he was less sure he wanted to stay where he was. He made a few steps before feeling himself slow down. As hard as he tried to move his feet, they became less and less cooperative. When he came to a full stop, the voice came again, this time with a touch of pity. "That's as far as you'll get. Don't want to be out there anyway. It's freezing." With some effort, Harold turned and started back toward town. He saw the person who had been talking and walked toward him. Hey, buddy, what's going on here? What's with this place? He tried to sound tough, but Harold was anything but certain as the words came out of his mouth. Well, there's something going on here, that's for sure. Why don't you come in and get settled? Then I can answer all of your questions. The man smiled. For now, let's just say you've arrived at a haven from the coming storm. What's that supposed to mean? I don't feel that safe at the moment. He looked at the man. Nothing personal, it's just not right. You know what I mean? Yes, Harold, I do know what you mean. He touched Harold on the shoulder. But I can assure you, it is safe here. Safer than just about anywhere out there. What's that supposed to mean? And how do you know my name? And we never met before. That's true, Harold. We never have. A smile came back to his face, bigger now. But we've met now, haven't we? I don't get it. Harold had no more words. The man started to walk. Harold stayed put. The man turned around. None of us are here by chance. You're meant to be here. That's how I know your name. He stood for just long enough to add, Come on, I'll show you your house. They walked along the road for a few minutes before coming to a street lined with houses. As Harold looked to his right and then his left, he realized that the town only seemed to have one street. What's with this place? I'm guessing this is Main Street, but where's the rest of town? He looked closer. There isn't even an alley. What's with that? We don't need alleys here. Every house comes with a built-in garbage disposal unit. I think you'll enjoy the convenience. Harold stopped talking at that point. They were at the end of the street now, and he stared down the block. As it continued off into the distance, the houses seemed to reflect older architectural designs, and yet all of them looked as if someone had built them just yesterday. As he strained to see a few blocks down, he saw the houses gave way to a large field. There was smoke rising from campfires in it. I don't like this. Harold turned to walk away. His guide spoke. You can't leave now. Harold turned back to listen. And you wouldn't want to. You found sanctuary here. We've chosen you to assure the survival of humanity. This is bullshit. Harold turned and started to walk, fast. He didn't get far before the man called out to him. There is no exit. The town is closed to the outside world. Harold kept walking. The voice continued. The entrance, it's closed now. And then with more force, You can't leave. Harold knew that was true. He felt the town wrapped around him like a blanket. There'd be no escape. He resigned himself to whatever was coming next and turned back to the man. My house, eh? All right, let's go have a look. The man was holding out a set of keys. You don't need these, but a house isn't complete without them, wouldn't you say? Harold stared back. Benevolent jailer, that's what he was. He took the keys and walked to the front door. He didn't bother trying them in the lock. He knew the door would be open. Turning the handle, he walked inside, saw a hook on the wall, and hung the keys up. The place was almost too familiar. He wondered if he'd been there before. Maybe in a dream, déjà vu. Do you like it? Harold replied without turning. It'll do. Has to, doesn't it? There was no reply, and he walked down the hall until he came to a kitchen. He walked to a fridge and pulled it open. It was stocked all right. Looked like someone had just come back from the store. Everything he liked. Milk, cheese, fruit, lettuce, the Holy Trinity, bacon, beer, bratwurst. He wasn't hungry. Nice. How did you know? He closed the fridge and turned to look at his host. You aren't here by accident, Harold. We've been watching for you for a while. That sent a shiver down Harold's back. Then you know I don't like being caged in. No one does, Harold. Don't worry. You won't be here for more than a few weeks. At most. Why am I even here at all? The man looked at his watch and spoke. You'll have visitors in about an hour. Welcome wagon, you could say. Why don't you settle in? They can tell you all about Sanctuary. Yeah, great. Can't wait. Perfect. All right then. I'll see you tomorrow for orientation. The man smiled and made a slight bow. And once again, welcome. With that, he turned and walked out the door, smooth as a summer breeze. Harold found the living room and sprawled on the couch. For all the uncertainty he was experiencing, he did feel at home. He looked over to his side table and saw a remote. What the hell? When he pushed the red button, a large screen television came to life. There it was, the world, loud, mindless. He scrolled channels and the screen obliged. One moment talking about current events, the next screaming out game show excitement. He pushed the red button again and silence returned. Next thing he knew, a doorbell was ringing, pulling him back from the depths of sleep. He went to see what was coming next. He opened the door, and half a dozen smiling faces greeted him. The man in front held out his hand. "Hi, I'm Jim." Harold reached out, shook. "Harold, pleased to meet you, I guess." The man's smile didn't waver. "Yeah, Morton told us a bit about you. Not a lot. He likes us to get to know each other face to face." "Morton, is that guy?" Harold waved his hand, looking for words. "The guy that brought you here?" Jim waited for his obvious reply. "Yeah, him." "Yep, that's Morton. He's the town caretaker." The man chuckled. For lack of a better description. He stopped and cleared his throat. "Good guy." Stopped again, shrugged his shoulders, waded through the silence. Can we come in?" "Sure, why not?" The group pushed past Harold with Jim taking the lead. As they passed, each one said hello or welcome or whatever greeting best suited them. One was carrying a cake, another had a casserole. One woman had a loaf of bread, and she wafted toward Harold as she passed. They were an odd collection. One dressed as a hippie, another resembling someone from Victorian England. Another wore an outfit made of what appeared to be thick wool. Harold wondered if he was dreaming. Though he knew he wasn't, he followed his guests into the kitchen. "Best place for a little gathering, wouldn't you say?" Jim was going through the cupboards and brought out shot glasses. Harold wondered what was going into them as he noticed the hippie character opening another cupboard. "I knew it," the young man said. "It's always in the third one from the left." The hippie pulled out a bottle and brought it to the table. The others were already starting to take seats. There was one place left, and Harold took that one. Jim opened the bottle and started pouring around. When he finished, he pushed the glasses around the table and lifted one. "Here's to our new friend, Harold." "To Harold!" They all took a sip, then lowered their glasses. Harold stared at his, still untouched. Jim broke the silence. "So, Harold, I suppose I should introduce everyone here." He grinned, and Harold knew why. There was no need for introductions. He knew all the people seated around him already. Greg was a hippie. Bonnie was the woman who brought bread. Agnes was the casserole lady. The other two were Kathy and William. He had to ask, "How do I know your names?" "You know all of us. You just haven't met everyone yet." Jim seemed pleased with this turn of events. "I'll take you around tomorrow. I think you'll like this place." "You haven't answered my question. How do I know your names?" Jim played with his glass. It was empty now, and Agnes filled it back up. "Thanks, Agnes." "Well, you see, Harold, that's a little hard to explain. When you go for orientation tomorrow, Morton will go over the finer points. For now, let's just say everyone here went through an interview process before getting signed on for the ride." He took a sip. "It's just not something that everyone remembers." He smiled. "Let's say that you're in Sanctuary now, and it's a real community." Jim knocked back his drink and waited for a top-up. "We're all connected, and all of us have a purpose." "Well, that's great." Harold was becoming frustrated. "And what would that purpose be?" Bonnie spoke up. "We're going to save humanity." "What the hell?" Harold laughed hard, grabbed his drink, and threw it back. "Fill it up, Agnes." "Sure thing," she obliged. It was Greg's turn. "It's true, man. The past has no future. I knew that when I was still at Berkeley." He stopped. "Agnes?" She topped him up. He continued. "The world's going to end, man. Nothing we can do about it. Not back here anyway. The future needs us. That's where we're headed." "That's funny, Greg. You sure you didn't smoke something before you got here?" "Hey, man, no need to insult the herb." Jim broke in. "It's true, Harold. The world ends, and it's coming soon. There won't be many left when the smoke clears." Harold was getting agitated. That makes no sense at all. How do you know this? Jim looked right at him. When you go to orientation tomorrow, you'll have a first row seat to the end of the world. We're in a bubble, Harold. Sanctuary is a bubble. The ones that survived what's about to happen, they built it, he clarified. A few hundred years from where we are right now. I don't know how they did it, but the fact that I'm sitting here talking to you is enough proof for me. That's as real as it gets. He stopped and looked at the table. What year is it out there? 2019. Why? Jim didn't answer the question. Well, I came here in 1988. He looked straight at Harold. And it's been about a month since I arrived. As soon as the words came out of Jim's mouth, Harold knew they were true. Still, he protested. That's bullshit. There's no way that can be true. He sputtered and got quiet. Agnes looked at him, held up the bottle and waved it at his glass. Yeah, please. She poured him another shot. Jim continued. It's true, and you know it. We're on a fast train to the future. And that's where we save humanity. They've got everything sorted out, but they can't fix the gene pool. They're dying out. That's where we come in. This is a goddamn zoo. Harold pushed his glass away. And we're breeding stock. I can think of worse things. Greg got up from the table. I'm going outside. He looked at Harold. For a smoke. He left. There was a moment of silence. Then Jim stood up, followed by the rest. I think we'll leave you alone for tonight. It's a lot to take in. Trust me, you'll feel better after you go for the orientation. How long do we have? Harold didn't look up as he asked. It's going to happen 3 years from now. That's 3 days, our time. We're stopping for 2 more pickups, and then we'll be speeding up. We should be back to normal time in a week, maybe 2. Normal time, you mean the future, right? Yes, the future. 500 years from now. Jim turned to go. See you tomorrow. I'll stop by to pick you up. Great, yeah. Harold felt just like he'd swallowed a rock. He spent the night laying on the couch. For a while, he flipped channels, but the images made him feel even more like a prisoner. He thought of his life on the other side of this place, this town called Sanctuary. He was a loner out there. Even when he was around other people, he made himself scarce. That's how he ended up here. He left the others behind and took off on his own. 1 year every day. He wondered if it was summer out there yet. Maybe it was. How long had he been here? A few hours? Half a day? He had to get back out, whatever that took. He fell asleep. The next morning he got up and made coffee, then waited for Jim to arrive. He got there while the sun was still low on the horizon. As he went to answer the door, Harold wondered if it was the same son he'd grown up with. Jim had his smile going. So, you slept well. You ready for orientation? Harold lied. Yes, to both questions. They stepped out into the day. As they walked toward the sidewalk, Harold saw Morton heading down the other side of the street. Where's he going? Oh, he's off to meet our next guest. Harold stood still, watched Morton walk off down the street. Can we go watch? Jim looked a little puzzled with the question. I suppose so. There's not much to see. Maybe not for you, but I wouldn't mind watching from this side. Okay, sure. I can't see a problem with that. Let's go. I think we'll be slowing down in a few minutes. They headed down the block. Jim set a fast pace that made Harold feel like time was very limited. They caught up with Morton just as he got to the place where Harold had stepped through. He turned to them. Hello, gentlemen. Come to watch our guest arrive? Yes. Harold hasn't seen this before, and with only 1 more guest arriving, I guess it's as good a time as any. Yep, no time like the present. Morton looked pleased with himself. At first, the scene outside seemed to speed past in a blur. Slowly, it started to become clear. Harold watched as a person stumbled toward their position. She looked disoriented and lost, surrounded by sand. What's her story? Harold asked. Lost in a sandstorm. Morton spoke without looking back. He focused on the woman. And she's going to walk right in here? Yes, she is. We know exactly where she'll find us. Now he looked back. Worked for you, didn't it? Yeah, it did. Harold felt a little stupid for asking. As the woman got closer, a thought crossed his mind. Why couldn't he run out when she came in? As she got closer, it looked like she was also starting to slow down. This might be his last chance to get back out. He waited until she looked at them with salvation written in her eyes. As she walked in, barely able to stay on her feet, Harold ran out the other way. She looked at him as he sped past. Back in Sanctuary, Jim called out, "Stop! You can't go back. You'll be..." And that was the last thing Harold heard from the other side. He felt himself slowing down, even as he smelled the fresh air of a world outside the bubble. For a moment, joy filled his heart, and he thought he was free. That only lasted for a fleeting second. Hope washed away as he realized that he could no longer proceed forward. With the last movement left to him, he looked at his hands, stretched out in running position. The skin had started to dry, and he couldn't feel them anymore. He watched his shirt as a desert wind ripped it apart and saw the effects of weather moving up his arm with unrelenting speed. His last thoughts were of a future he would never get to see. Back in Sanctuary, Jim, Morton, and the woman watched as Harold stood frozen between two time streams. Jim covered the woman's eyes. "Come on, Marlene. I'll explain it all later." Jim looked at Morton. Morton nodded his approval. "Where am I?" she asked. "You've made it to Sanctuary. Let's go meet the others." "Thank you for saving me." "That's what we're here for." And that's the end. I hope you liked that one. As always, if you did, you can subscribe. I'm not going to point at the button today because I always point at the wrong place. And I'm going to take a little break from Stories by Kev for a week or two. I've got some stuff in the can. I just have to edit it. But I'm working on a novel. I haven't mentioned that before. So got to put in a little bit of time on that. Anyway, it's been great reading these stories. And I'll see you back in 2-3 weeks. Probably not a lot longer than that. In the meantime, take care of yourselves. Bye for now.